formerly of Google, a man of many talents. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, man, we really appreciate you coming on tonight.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm Kevin.
And I'm your co-host Brian. I do want to mention today this fly hat that I got on right now is from our friends at Backshore Apparel. You can find them at BACKSHOREAPPAREL.com.
Awesome. So yeah, Ohad, venture capitalists. That's really interesting. We haven't had any venture capitalists on that show.
Not yet. Yeah. You're the
Yeah, I happen
first.
to be the first one here.
You're the first. Yeah.
So yeah, if you don't mind, just get things started off. People have their conceptions of what a venture capitalist might do, but can you tell us firsthand, like what are some of the bigger tasks that you engage in on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, really, when you think about this, a venture capitalist is in a position to link between capital and investments with new innovation in the market, right? It's usually people that have built a career and some reputation, knowledge, domain expertise that can then identify who are going to be the next founders and the next ideas and markets that would have a lot of innovation in them. And then kind of really funnel some of their innovation from their fund, from their investors into some of the newer startups and founders. And I was lucky enough to build a career in tech. So I'm a tech operator and founder that eventually turned out to be venture capitalist after I've seen tech in a big corporation like Google. Then tech being built in a startup that was growing very, very fast about a decade ago, then build tech in my own company, Kahuna, in the data privacy space, and finally kind of really see how that works as an investor when you're looking at different companies. So nowadays, I'm in a position to really understand, how does AI revolutionize and disrupt some industries and some sectors, and what are some characteristics of founders that I believe would be more correlated with success in these spaces.
Awesome. So yeah, like, do you feel like your time working in the tech industry has that really helped you identify some of these characteristics of these founders? Like this particular set of traits will probably translate into a successful business, and if so, like, can you kind of like share some of that insight that someone who didn't have a career in tech would not have?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'll start by sharing a story because I think it's interesting. I graduated from MIT's business school, MIT Sloan, in 2012, and I remember vividly one of my classmates asking me, "Ohad, are you going to start a company right off your MBA?" And
Yeah.
maybe coming out of MIT, that's kind of the standard. Like people are very innovative, they're very smart, they're driven, they have ideas in different types of
Right.
directions that they want to take it. My answer to that question was absolutely no. I'm not ready. I don't believe, I'm just very honest here. I can sort of do some storytelling and maybe fake it till you make it. I'm just going to be honest and saying I don't have enough experience to build a company right now. And it took me another 10 years of experience, both at Google and then at Zoic, one of Google's partners, to really see the industries, look at different perspectives, be involved in fundraising, build credibility, and build accomplishments before I was ready to build my own company. And same goes for venture capital. If someone asked me today, do you recommend that I leap over to the venture capital world post my undergrad or graduate? I'd recommend hold on, build some domain expertise in the industry, work in spaces that you like, whether it's climate or in the legal field or in tech or in other spaces. And when you have that domain expertise and you've developed a good, strong network and some credibility, then you can start thinking about how do you position yourself in the venture capital world. And so, yeah, for me, the tech world was very, very important. First of all, to understand, what is tech? Even if I've been always on the business side or partnership side of tech, how do you interact? How do you work with tech people? What are some qualities that are important for the people that really build the technology itself? And then I had a chance to work with different types of founders in different companies, both that I partnered with or companies that I've been part of or even co-founded with. And I've seen some of the correct characteristics that are critical for these founders, right? Um, People say, they move through walls. They don't take no for an answer. They find creative ways to get that yes, right? They're very driven. The perseverance is amazing. And when I say perseverance, just think about this. And I'm asking the audience as well. Um, could you deal with a goal if I just gave you a goal now for 10 years? I have a goal for you to work on it for 10 years. That is not like, oh, I'm going to work really hard this month. It's like, a calisthenics challenge or like a
Yeah.
30 days. It's something that requires a lot of thinking ahead and a good amount of
Commitment.
time to understand that there's a patience behind that.
Yeah, that's a massive commitment, 10 years.
Right, but sometimes that's what's actually required. The stats show that if you build a startup, in order to get to an exit or an IPO, it's between 8 to 15, sometimes more in terms of years. This isn't something that you do for a short term. And so you really kind of start building that. I have a profile of founders that are successful and what they need and what they do and how they act. And, a lot of times it's people that are true leaders, that they have that very unique skill that can also attract others to be with them. Part of my thesis today at Venture Forward Capital is we invest in repeat founders, and we're positioned to have unique access to some of this audience. And when you look at some of these founders, I think it's pretty intuitive. They come with already almost a followership that went after them because they're either brilliant technologists and they can build anything, or they're just the best salespeople in their space. They know the clients, they can really sort of set that up. Or they're good leaders, and they were able to take talent that just moves company after company after them. It's quite impressive to see. Same with customers, by the way. People that are domain experts in a specific place, they call up customers. The customers are there because they know that they're going to create solutions for them that would revolutionize their business. And so I think you kind of have to have that experience first, from a first party perspective, that knowledge that you gain in order to then know how to execute on it.
Would you be able to explain to the audience kind of ultimately how you became a venture capitalist versus, say, a CTO or some other director level position?
Yeah, that's a great question. Somewhere in the middle of 2023 is when I had the buyout for my company, for Kahuna. I was eager to build another company. And another founder, and this is very maybe coincidental in a way, said, there's a group in town here in San Diego called New Fund, and it's a member investment group. It's pretty closed. You have to have a background of an executive in a top company or ex-founder, ex-investor in order to be qualified for that group. Why don't you join there? There's so many domain experts. This would help you with ideation. You'll meet some people that really understand their domains and potentially co-founders or whatnot. So I joined that group with the intention of meeting my co-founder, potentially looking at different ideas that people have. And as I was getting into investments and start to be part of due diligence kind of teams and then leading due diligence, I realized this is great. I'm getting this macro view of industries. It's almost like this, you bring your curiosity to the table because it's this intellectual challenge of, is this a good deal? Why or why not? You have to take a very professional approach to this, right? There's founders who are waiting for your feedback. You don't want to throw things in and create a reputation of yourself as someone who doesn't look deep. So go into these. And it was almost like these puzzles to solve. And after a while of doing it, today I'm actually on the board of New Fund as well. I've been there for about 3 years.
Nice.
I met my co-founder or my partner in Venture Forward Capital. His name is Mike Schatzman, and he's from Chicago. And we're both part of this organization called PEF, Post Founders Exit, or Post Exit Founders, community. Mike and I are both chapter leads, and we connected. And the funny part is he told me he's very excited about the world of AI and where AI is going. And he actually started to build an AI fund. But he realized, he actually came from the IPO of Visa, and he came from the restaurant world. He's a very good operator, and said, I don't have the expertise that you have as a tech founder. Do you want to join me? And
wow.
It's a fund one was a smaller fund. So it's $6 million, and we had 22 investments, and we finished it just a few months ago. But that was a great opportunity for me to take what I've already done at New Fund, but at a higher scale, right? Because now it's more of that full time. And so a lot of what we do today is, one, we meet with quite a few founders. And again, our thesis is pretty locked in. And so we really prefer spending our time with more experienced founders. Our whole philosophy is we invest in people that are way smarter than us, and we don't interrupt them. So but this is the thing, because I asked, some investors even asked me, how do you ensure control in your investments that you make? Like, I think you missed the point. I don't need that control, because I invest in people that have been there, done that. They're trusted by their investors. They already have existing investors. They have investors from their previous companies, and I invest them to help them and support them. I'm not investing them to tell them what to do. That's maybe there's a strategy of investing in talented first-time founders. I'm not saying that that's wrong. My strategy is really focusing on these founders who are prolific at what they do. They know what they do, and you can help them by opening doors, making introductions, potentially bringing more capital to the table, not by interrupting them. And so that's a lot of what I do. I'm also thinking a lot about AI in my business, right? How can we add automation? And I know it's scary to hear people, talk about this.
Automation, yeah.
Is this taking our job? Even my analyst that works with us at Venture for Capital, I introduced a tool that did, we would spend hours in the last few years writing memos for investors on some of our investments and giving them updates. And I introduced this tool that does everything for you, the due diligence, the memo. And, he's like, do you need me still, or what am I doing here?
What am I doing?
Yeah. And my philosophy on this is, first of all, it's a transition, right? And it's natural for people to fear this transition because the timeline, it will take time to feel or to kind of find where is it that we add value and what's our purpose around the world of technology that can be automated. And I believe that we'll find it. I think in the short term, it's more of a human in the loop type of like, let's play nicely with AI instead of fighting or combating it or feeling that it's automatically replacing us. And of course, I expect from CEOs and from business leaders to have that ethical mindset of like, how do we do this properly? Not how we do it just looking at the balance sheet and saying, oh my God, I can fire 75% of my team. Gradually, I think that will probably happen. But there's so many things we can do in the meantime to help with that transition until we find what are the new roles, post the AI world that are now offered to people to do that career pivot to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn a lot to do a lot of the networking for the show. And I see a lot of these, call them new AI roles. They're roles that never existed before, but now are in extremely high demand. So it's pretty interesting.
It's pretty good to see that as well. I think just in terms of timeline, it would take time until, you probably heard this comparison before. People were talking about the Industrial Revolution, right? And people were thinking, oh my God, if you take people out of factories, what would happen to them? But the Industrial Revolution was it took about 4 decades to be completed. And so that allowed enough time maybe to people to reinvent themselves. With AI, the timeline is such that the development is so fast and is maybe the timeline of people thinking about their next job would take more time. So that's why maybe there's a little bit of misalignment there.
So like you made a fantastic point about not wanting to take control over the people you work with. I believe Warren Buffett, he mentioned something similar, like he likes to work with people he actually likes and he respects. I think that's a two-way street of how empowering it is, because if you don't have to babysit someone, that gives you more time to bring value in other areas. And, these people, they know how to do their jobs, so they don't necessarily need you to hold their hands. And I think that's a fantastic way of building a collaborative partnership versus like a dictatorship where you're constantly having to monitor and micromanage.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. Great perspective.
Yeah. That's exactly sort of my my position there. By the way, I'm very, I don't know if every investor wants to say this. I'm a supportive role for innovation. I'm not the center of that innovation. I put the founder in that sort of center. Some investors maybe feel that they're the center of the universe because they raise money and now they can make the decision. It's a lot of power. It is a lot of power, right? Because you have you make the decision on where to invest. But no, I'm supporting the innovation. And so I really need to understand what my position there. And I think the best, funds, and this is maybe where we built our reputation, is I'm an ex-founder. And when I pitch myself to a founder that I'd like to invest in, I tell them, look, I've been in your journey. I can be in your corner. Like, think about me as that executive on the bench that when things go wrong, you call me and I don't ask like, where's my money? This isn't what I paid for. It's more about, let's think about how we can solve this. There's a problem with our financials. We need to think about cash flow solutions for the next 3 months. What about different sort of CRM issues that are happening with my go-to-market? How can we fix that in a better way? How do you think we should build the organization? Should we hire this position or that position? These are questions that I'm not annoyed by. Like I feel needed when I'm asked this question by the founder and I can support them with information. They are the decision maker. I'm the advisor in that case. So that's really the relationship, and I think that's what founders prefer versus the not saying anything bad about funds from New York or from Wall Street, but just money that comes with spreadsheets and where's the milestone? I'm looking at my spreadsheet. I'm looking for the multiplier. That's a different angle. I think they want more support.
Okay.
No, it's like I've been in leadership positions. I'm at a leadership position in my current job, and I find it really refreshing when you have a lot of competent people you're working with, because you can let go of a lot. You don't have to constantly handhold, and there's a lot less to worry about if you could just say, hey, do this job, and they have the expertise to do it. So you being the collaborator, I'm sure like you provide direction, you give support, but competent people, they don't need too much help. They just they might need a little support, but you just kind of let them go and they make things happen. So like in terms of you finding these collaborators, like what are some of the characteristics they have that make you want to work with them versus maybe you steering clear of this particular person?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first and foremost, I really focus on this community. Part of my leadership role in PEF, the post-exit founder community, kind of gives me access to know a lot of these exited founders that have success in their career. That's almost like that sort of first checkpoint when I meet with these founders. Then I'd really want to understand their level of expertise in the domain, or at least someone on our team. So let me give you an example. I had spoken with two really smart computer scientists from Stanford a couple of years ago, and they were building something to revolutionize hospitals. Like, great mission, great vision. I thought the opportunity is great. I don't doubt their ability to build product. I don't doubt it. They're going to build the best product out there. Between building a product and getting this into hospitals and getting people to pay for it and work for it, it's a long journey. And for that, it's required for us to have someone on the team of founders that has that domain expertise and understanding. So a much better story is, let's say, a founder team that is building AI for real estate. One of the founders has been 20-something years in real estate. They're actually on the board of Zillow. They know all the influencers in the industry, and they go to all the events. So when that person tells me, look, we're early stage, we may not have revenue yet, but we have customers lined up, I can believe that, because really they have enough connections, enough knowledge in the market to make this work.
Sure.
So that level of domain expertise, I think, is very, very important. And then you have characteristics of, what looking at their profiles, what causes you to think that there's perseverance. For example, ex-professional athletes. It's always a very good example of someone that had a goal for a long time. Played D1 in college, or there's professional athletes who became NBA, NFL, and then started companies. There's different aspects. I hone in on their ability to understand distribution of, how are you creating a business that people would pay for, and how do you reach your customers? Like, what's that process looking like? And then I also want to see, what's the level of intelligence on the team. Like, I like founders who are very knowledgeable. They read a lot of trends. They move very, very fast, and they execute. Now, you actually usually measure that. We have a conversation sometimes, and this is maybe a tip for founders who are listening to this show. A conversation with the investor is not a transaction of one meeting. Like, we meet on Zoom, and you pitch your stuff, and I can say yes or no. It's more about a relationship that happens over time, where we meet a few times, and in that time, I can, sometimes it's maybe 3 months or 2 months or a month. I can always, like, we talked about it, and some time passed. Have you progressed, right? Quite often, the founders come back to me and say, hey, we talked a few weeks ago. Just want to let you know that we talked about that contract that's now closed, and that's already happening. So that's great news, because I also see their ability to execute over a short period of time, which gives me more indication that it has more probability to move forward versus just pitching and storytelling, which is, unfortunately, that's a lot of what I deal with, is like unpacking that story, right? When I hear the founder story, and there's a lot of a little bit of a twisting of numbers and a little bit of twisting of reality that has to be sort of, I want to understand the facts versus what you're not sure of, or what you predict. And these are all different buckets.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because like, even this podcast, for example, we've been doing this for years. Like, I think it's going like it's 4, maybe 5 years. And it's almost like planting a tree. You're not going to see the results immediately. You just work without seeing the results. And you also mentioned another interesting point is kind of seeing past the marketing, the facade, the story. With investments, you have to look at the actual principles that are going to produce results, because otherwise, you know, a story might sound good, but if the fundamentals are not there, then it's not going to make money. Um, so I think, yeah, like what are some of the I don't want to say tricks, but like what are some of the tactics you use to kind of dispel the marketing versus this is actually a viable, profitable potential business here?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. So, you're asking for some trade secrets here. No, but
Yeah.
so really, there's a few things. First of all, I have to say, teams that are kind of they're well documented when someone's pitching and saying all these numbers and big ideas and big directions, and we've done this and we've done that. There's always a way to ask for documentation of, okay, you're talking about so many revenue numbers. Do you have a spreadsheet with like what you gained so far and what your projection is? A good founder knows how to walk through that, like wake him up at 2 a.m. in the morning and they'll tell you exactly which number fits where. I've asked it to a few founders and they said through so many numbers in my way. And when I asked for this projection, it's like, well, we didn't really work on a projection yet. And it's like, okay, so that's kind of less serious, right? Number two is, it happens quite often, by the way, and this is not a fault of storytelling, that you have a founder that is very passionate about how they see the world. It's their projection of their industry or the world or the solution that they've built. So what I try to do is, I'm fascinated by that. I listen to that, but I put that aside, and then I go to the market to validate that. So you said that you believe that, let's just take kind of a recent example. You're saying that there's going to be a whole new software layer created because of robotics and physical AI, what's called. Okay, so now I'd like to go to some people in the industry who use robotics and ask what their perspective on that is.
Right.
Quite often, founders find that what they think the reality is not there, and actually it's not even the direction, right? And so you need that validation of customers that are excited about what this is built. And here's the beautiful news. You don't have to build or launch a company to get that confirmation. If you're a founder with that idea, the first thing I would do is go to the market and validate what you're doing, at least the idea, at least the first step,
Yeah.
the vision.
So the research, we're right. Talking research.
Right. But no one likes to do research. Why? Because it takes time. It's work. Right? No one wants to do work. That, right. Yeah. But the good founders that I've seen, quite often they came to me after about a process of, I don't know, the timeline changes, but it could be a year, it could be 2 years of, look, I've studied this space for a long time. I've launched a test or a beta, or I had like beta customers using it, and this is the insights I got from that. I'm talking with many customers who are already signing LOIs. These are all strong indications and very factual indications. Not, I think they're customers that are interested in the product, right? So these are some things that really help me assess, how much there is sort of that link between market, reality, founder. All these are very, very important.
So I know a lot of times artists, you have inventors, you kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, they like their particular craft. Like maybe they're excellent at singing, they love singing, or they love inventing, but they don't have the business sense. So do you ever like bet on people? They might be incredibly talented, but they don't have the business sense, but you're able to hopefully pair them with somebody who can handle the business aspect of them, and once those two come together, they'll actually be really successful.
Right. So that's exactly what I refer to complementary skills. I don't expect everyone to be anything. In fact, looking back at my career, I think I'm more extroverted. You can probably kind of sense and see that I probably speak more with partners and clients, right? Some of the best technicals that I've worked with that saved our companies multiple times for things that broke, or from a potential hacks that happened with our tech, and they're brilliant. They're awkward people. They don't speak, they speak slowly, or they speak to themselves, but they're very good at what they do. They're not going to sell to anyone anything. Like, they're not that inspiration, but they can build anything that you want. And so that complementary skills of people sometimes is just bringing the powers from each one. The builder, sometimes the domain expert, sometimes it's financial person that comes in. Like there's a lot of superpowers that could be integrated into a very, very powerful team. So to your question, I think the recommendation would be exactly what you said is, you have this great idea. You're an artist, you're creative. Why don't you find, or I can help you find, a co-founder that will really kind of take care of the business side. I'll just give you this nice, I don't not call it a quote, but the saying that first-time founders are deeply focused in product. Second-time founders are deeply focused in distribution, because they understood that it's about the how to get it to people, sometimes more than how to get the product, or sometimes just the opposite way around. Of, if I have the distribution, the customers would kind of guide me into what to build that they really kind of buy, and that sort of loop continues on and on. And so I think that creative talent can be a strong component of a founder team, but may not be sort of the leading one if they can't take care of the business side. And that's another sort of point to make here. I just spoke about this with a founder this morning. You hear a lot about founders that talk about their passion and their idea came because of a cause. Okay. I want to support the best nonprofits out there, or I want to support a specific cause that my business is there, solving a particular, let's say solving loneliness or solving a particular section of mental health. These are very important missions, and these are very important businesses to work on. But the way that I think about it, I'm separating between the cause and then just the business metrics. So think about like what I just said. Let's take the loneliness example and say, I want to strip this problem into business metrics only, like very cold. And quite often these don't match. There's some causes and there's some businesses. And in fact, some of my investments, I have to say, in my career are really strong business sides that are solving an exceptionally boring problem in an industry that people quite often don't care about. There's some businesses, that people just simply, it's like, I'm not excited to work with plumbers. Maybe the business there is great because that business is lacking a lot of advancement in technology, and you can really make a dent by building the solution. So I'm trying always to find that sort of correlation or that overlap of this is a business with a cause. They're really trying to solve something critical, but it could also be made a strong business case. Like there is a business here. There's margins to be made. It's a big industry. There's customers that are excited about it. Sometimes it's just difficult to find that overlap.
From what you're saying, it makes me think back to, let's say, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, where Steve Jobs, he's the face. He's the one garnering and collecting all the attention. And then you got Wozniak doing all the programming and setting up and whatever else he's doing. Those two people need each other. You can't just have one. That's kind of what I'm getting out of what you're saying.
That's a really good example of that complementary skills. I think Steve Jobs was very unique at having a vision and driving the industry towards that vision, which is, it's the edge cases. It's the rare cases of saying, I'm going to introduce something and really kind of drive the industry with it. And it's very interesting. I don't know, just because you mentioned it, I'll mention it quickly. I don't know if you're familiar with a company called Nokia that once had they were dominating the mobile phone industry. and in the, I guess, I would say probably early 2000s, before the first iPhone was released to the market, they said that if they don't introduce the touchscreen, they're going to be the first one to introduce it if they need it. It wasn't sort of a big urgency moment, and they were late to the game. And Apple came and really kind of took over the market with that. But he was really the person to have that vision and really drive the market afterwards. But that's a very difficult point. If you're coming to a market and say, I'm going to disrupt it by introducing something, it has to have a very clear value of like, it's a no-brainer. People are just doing it the wrong way, right? People need to change how they think about it, but you have to get their excitement into it.
I think there's another point to consider is like, do they have the personnel to innovate? Because especially in technology, things change quickly. Like, even the Nokia example, they were hot during 2000s, but I guess they didn't necessarily have the visionaries to pivot once the market started shifting in a different direction. So like, is that something you specifically look for in companies that you invest in? Like they might be doing well now, but they also have the expertise, they have the critical thinkers to be able to identify the trends of the future and pivot when necessary.
Yeah, it's part of the early team sort of strength that we're looking at. Now, again, remember, we invest very early stage, usually seed and pre-seed. So the teams are pretty small, pretty nimble.
Okay.
And I'd like to see them, what I can check is tell me a little bit about your hiring philosophy. How do you hire people, right? And again, these experienced founders, they already made the mistakes. Like me, I also hired people that were wrong, and I kind of learned from that. And I believe that they probably have developed the right approach to hire and get the right talent that they would need. I think the big change that is happening now, it's really the efficiency play with AI. So, 5-10 years ago, you kind of show the slide, I'm raising $5 million and here's how I'm going to, put the money in. And a lot of it is developers. I'm going to hire like a team of 30 developers and these team of salespeople. And I'm not sure that's really required now in a world of clear automation. So I think now it's going to be more people that are very efficient and can actually make like themselves a role of 2-3 people with agents and make sure that they're working in the most highly effective way. And I think it's rather, you rather pay 20%, 30% more than market price to that hire versus just hiring multiple people who are lower on their efficiency.
Were you about to say something, Brian?
I was just going to say, where do you see the market, the AI market part of things going in, let's say 2030,
Yeah.
a couple, 3 or 4 years from now, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, no, that's, the actual $1 trillion question. Let me give you my philosophy on how we kind of think about the market. So I'd say the following: the last 3.5 years have been, we've seen unprecedented investment in infrastructure. Okay, AI infrastructure, to explain to people that may not know, is think about the GPUs. NVIDIA probably is the biggest player there. Think about data centers that are built all over the world, and think about LLMs. The models, OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini. To me, those are all sort of the basis and the foundation of AI. You kind of need them in order to build the next step. The transition that we're seeing now, and we think it's going to take 5, 10, maybe more years, is to the application layer. So now the question is, how do you take AI and make something useful out of it? Something that actually shows some business metrics: automation, efficiency, more revenue, more margins, better results, more accuracy. That's like the business metrics or the market metrics that really show that there's value, not just compute power. And so we're seeing this across all the sectors. And I think that you're asking about 2030. 2030 is still in a year that there's going to be expansion. And I'm speaking with individuals that are experts in almost all industries. I don't think I've spoken with one who says, no, AI, they're not going to be here at all, right? There's different paces. There's industries that would adapt sooner rather than later. The industry will be faster. It's going to be in every function vertical and also functions of our lives as consumers and as just human beings. There's going to be AI that helps you with different tasks. It isn't going to replace, I don't think it's going to replace the personal touch and relationship between people. We're still here. But that's where we're going to see sort of AI operate. And there's a lot of questions. For example, education. How is that going to impact, the education? And I have a daughter that goes to middle school. Like, what is her path going into high school? And what is her path going into college? Is it the same thing?
Right.
Is there any sort of topics or subjects or majors that you want to try to avoid because of AI? So I think we're still dealing with a lot of these questions, but you're going to see it everywhere. And it's honestly it's here to stay. This is not a hype. I don't think this is something that would sort of easily fade away. It's just something that is part of our day to day.
So I think with trend analysis, it's really important in the field you're in, investing. You have to look at how things are now and how they will be in the future. With AI, for example, I think that it has to be analyzed how it is being integrated into a company, because right now the costs of AI are being subsidized, so that if you just fire everybody, replace it with AI, once the demand increases, everybody starts getting on AI, the prices start shooting up, and now the AI becomes more expensive than a human. So that's a potential pitfall there. Me personally, I think AI, it's great in the hands of specialists, people who know how to use it efficiently. They're not wasting tokens on trivial matters. So, like, do you have like any set of strategies on making sure that people are integrating AI in a way that's not eventually going to turn into a downside? Let's just say like they have the security protocols in place so the AI doesn't delete the production database.
Yeah, so that's a very big topic. Trust, governance, monitoring, guardrails. These are just key discussions in the industries now, and I think because of the rapid pace of development, we're going to have some failures. Like we haven't had like a major breach. We had, you probably know about the whole situation with Mythos of Anthropic, where they really kind of looked at different sort of loopholes within the financial world. But that was discovered early on. I think we're going to have some glitches, some AI, hacking systems, or some major fraud that would probably happen. And it's good that we're already aware of this and discussing what are the best ways for companies, and also in some regulation of what you must do if you are operating with AI systems. I think companies are generally taking it very seriously and are operating within sort of boundaries and closed environments, local environments where there's less room for infringements. I do think that that's happening, but it's discussions that we are having with founders as they implement it. Now, in terms of value, and that's the thing, AI as a methodology exists, and honestly, it's commoditized and just adding AI. But you heard about this concept called the wrapper, which if a company says I'm AI and all they do is they have an API connection to one of the LLMs, they're not really adding something new. So you really have to have a unique take. And usually it's either you have expertise with a workflow and you can build AI around a workflow that people generally don't know, or you bring unique data. So, AI is really as good as the data that comes in. Think about this as a machine, and there's data that comes in for training, and then there's an output. If the data isn't great, the output isn't great. If the data is very unique,
right,
quite often not public, then the output is very different than what you can find results that are just on general tools. And so I think the founders that realize that, they try to create that very unique private data, or they may have access to something that is private data for training that can then generate the right and unique results for the AI to be sustainable and very, very valuable for their clients.
Ultimately, what made you become a venture capitalist? Was there something that happened early on in your career that like really moved you in that direction? Or was it something that you sort of always saw yourself doing or being?
Yeah, so there's, I think it's a combination of a few things. One, as I said before, it's that macro view of I have that really bird's eye view in different industries, and the ability to work with founders who are great and really assessing them and their businesses while they're the experts there. I really love that concept. If it's a bigger picture and like why am I excited about technology and disruption overall innovation, I actually think I do have something, and it took me a while to realize it. Back in the day, I'm a 90s sort of high schooler or teenager at those times. I was the first generation of internet back in Israel, and just excited to play the first online games and chat with my friends. Like, oh my God, I can speak with a friend on my computer. That is fascinating. I wasn't very fascinated about the how it works from the back end, like the code. I had some friends who just wanted to understand how it all works from a code and engineering perspective. I was always fascinated by the innovation, especially how it touches and scales very fast. My first idea for an e-commerce store was probably like 94, 95 of like, this is incredible. What if I have a store? I can sell something to a person in the US from Israel.
Right.
Nuts. I think some of that kind of remained with me in my career and kind of maybe circled back to, I really love new innovation, and I want to support how that helps disrupt and helps create opportunities for businesses and for people, and creates more job, and I can be part of it. But as I said, like I'm a supportive function to the great founders that we invest in.
100%.
So like I know that, especially in terms of investing, sometimes it's better to go to the fields that are less saturated, less explored, for example. So a lot of people, they're moving into AI. So you also spend time exploring those orchards where it's kind of untouched by AI. It's kind of ignored because it's not a quote unquote sexy business. Are you looking for plays in those orchards because it might be easier since there's so much competition in AI space?
Yeah. So one, just for our audience as well, I'll put a plug here just because I think it's interesting. On our Venture Forward Capital Substack, a few weeks ago, we wrote a piece on the questions about what's called vertical versus horizontal. So horizontal solutions are solutions that are much more broad and really sort of think about Slack, right? It's a communication tool for every business, whether you're a small business or a big SaaS company, everyone kind of uses Slack. Versus what's called vertical solutions, which is solutions that are very niche towards one, subsector sometimes. And the general sort of perception is that in these niches, it's much less competitive. And not only it's much less competitive, the bigger LLM players are not going to build unique models for a given space. Just to give you an example, one of my investments is a company called Roofer. It's a SaaS technology. It's a Y Combinator company in the roofing space. And so it's unlikely that OpenAI is going to say, I think it's time for us to build an LLM focused on roofing. But when a company comes and says, I have a SaaS solution just to understand that. And again, that domain expertise now is very key, as you can understand. Who are the players? Who are the different organizations here? What are the dynamics in the market that I have to take into consideration when working in this industry? Then you see really these problems that are greenfield of opportunities, because some of their incumbents are companies from the 80s or 90s that are not well versed with technology. So yes,
interesting.
That's the so that article really kind of gives you some perspectives on vertical versus horizontal. But you're absolutely right. It's sometimes the unsexy spaces that are the most interesting in terms of business opportunities, and the fact that there is no competition, because your top competition is a company that has no technology.
That's interesting you say that, because I feel like our podcast represents something that's not necessarily being done in the space, where we'll interview high-level professionals from any industry all over the map. And I don't really see that being done on a large scale, at least. So I'm wondering, a company like our podcast, how would we jump into, the VC realm where people are saying, oh, that looks like a great idea, or I love the topics that they discuss, I want to invest. What does that look like for a podcast?
So it actually, addressed maybe similar to what we said before, is the fact that there's so many podcasts out there bears the question of, one, is there a unique topic that gets there? And if you're saying like, well, we have people from all over the place, what is that sort of one thing that ties everyone together, right? Is it maybe people successful in their careers, career journeys, or anything kind of that you want to define? Number two is, again, when it comes to investment, always think about what's the business outcomes. Sometimes for founders, like, I want people to invest in me, give me money, and I'll do what I do.
I promise I'll do it.
Yeah. Then it's more like, if I give you money, I'm looking at the return. Like, when is the return? What is the expected return there? Here's something interesting that I want to share with the audience and with you as well, because I think this gap is one of the things that founders sometimes are not aware of. If I was, let's say, guys, I offer myself here as a co-founder for your podcast here, and we're building this podcast, and I tell you, I think we can get an exit of $60 million. Guys, $60 million for this podcast. We each go with $20 million, and let's go to golf together in Torrey Pines, right? Sounds fun, no? Sounds pretty good. Unfortunately for the investor, that's a huge fail. Why is that a huge fail? Because in their model, they have to aim for businesses that have a very significant multiplier. And most acquisitions, actually, I don't know if people know this, are in the maybe 40, 50, 60 million. That's the range. If you're the hundreds plus acquisition, I'm not even talking about the big, shooting stars of SpaceX and others. If you're in that 150, 200, you're already kind of top notch. And so the problem here is that investors really invest in businesses that have that ability to scale massively to the sizes that would give them the return that they need. Otherwise, it's for the risk that they're putting in, not a great return. For us as founders, going back to our story, that's a good return. So that's the gap that is created here.
How are they able to determine that?
Right. So I think that's part of the, where it's the art and science really converge in a way, but you have to kind of make the assessments of, one, is this market big enough? Off the bat, I can tell you that there's some businesses who are aiming for markets that are very, very small. And even if they will generate a significant market share and they will capture that, they won't be able to be sold by more than, I don't know, if your top potential is being sold for $100 million, that's just not a great outcome there. And so market sizes is very, very important. Number two is, it's the strategy and that's the distribution. It's all the aspects that we talked about as investors. Like why do you think they will be the winner? Is there good founder market fit? Do you see this founder putting all their effort and really becoming that founder that would, win the space? Usually, I mean, take a look at all these founders of the great companies that are mentioned here, whether it's Elon Musk or Amudai from Entropic, Sam Altman. They have backgrounds that are very, very, very impressive and very relevant to the markets that they're working on. And, you see those characteristics of very, very strong founders. And so those are some of I'm trying to bet on the next cohort of these founders that would be the winners of their categories and really bring like very, very ambitious and very audacious solutions and approaches to the market.
I think with podcasts, like you mentioned, everybody's starting a podcast because the barrier to entry is so low. The ability to stand out and become great, that's where it becomes incredibly difficult. Like investment, it's called like building a moat. You have to have something that others can't duplicate easily. And I think in podcasts, a lot of times it comes down to the personalities of the hosts and, just their willingness to do something different. Because, a lot of times what I'm seeing now is a lot of celebrities, they're starting podcasts and they're just bringing their audience, but they're sticking into the field that they're good at. Athletes speak to athletes, musicians speak to musicians. A lot of times they don't have the ability to traverse across different fields. So
it's like that one lane. They're just staying in that one lane that they're already in, you're saying.
Yeah, so that's the question. Some of them are trying to build, as I said, like own your niche, own your sub market, your area, just to become like. I think that the concept there is try to become the person that people reach out to you because they know that you're an expert in this specific field, and you're trying to build your domain expertise around that. So maybe that's the difference between, hey, I have this horizontal talk with all personalities, like have like a very, very broad net and kind of see what episodes are better versus the expertise in one domain, right? And I think both of them have pros and cons, but to stand out, you may want to have a little bit of more of a specific topic in mind. And again, maybe it's not like an industry topic, but it's more the concept of the show itself, like as we said, like trust and authenticity. I don't know if there's a lot of podcasts or shows that are strictly about failures. Like, let's just talk about failure. We've done in PF, and this is a concept that someone else invented, but you probably heard about what's called F up nights or fuck up nights. And it's a gathering of people, and you have 10 minutes to pitch, and it's just about your failure. Like, this is not a hero story. It's just, I'm here. I want to tell you about a big failure. I want to tell you about what I learned from it. And I take responsibility for that. I think the authenticity of that is nowhere else to be found.
Sounds very like vulnerable.
Exactly. And by the way, I think that's also a great way to build in a community. That's a great way to build relationship, because in most of my communities, like, we all talk about our success and everyone has their profile, and introduction is, what's the great thing that you've done? Oh, you worked at Google, or you did this or did that. This is a great opportunity to say, I'm human. I failed. Let me share that with you. Maybe you can actually learn and potentially not fall in the pitfalls that I went through. But I think that's a great example of, like, okay, what if there's a podcast focused on that authenticity of like really touching stories, maybe, right? Yeah.
So, like, let's just say you're starting your podcast hypothetically. What do you believe is more important, just having like a great quote unquote product, like a great podcast, or is it better to have the better surrounding business infrastructure, like distribution and so on and so forth? Let's just say like McDonald's, for example, their hamburger isn't necessarily the greatest, but their business model is like knocking it out of the park.
I honestly think it's both. Maybe you start, there's the saying, content is king. You do have to start with a concept that is interested and differentiated enough. Like the series that I have on LinkedIn, it's called Repeat, decoding of the frameworks of repeat founders. And it's really about like my attachment and my access to unique, repeat founders and the insights that come out of it. And I chose to focus on that because that's a whole, point that is kind of differentiated, and just say, I'm going to write some business insights or some startup insights. So I honed in on that because it really ties back to me. That's what I'm passionate about. But distribution is very important, right? And I think I solved some of it. I still need to solve some of the other things to kind of amplify that. But it's both things. You have to have, good business tools and the things beyond the podcast, and you have to have good content. What I would say, though, is it's always steps. Like, it's okay if to tell me, look, we have a very strong business plan of how we want to do it and all these business tools and distribution channels that we want to do. We can't do everything right now, but we're going to start with this. So it's like step 1 out of 10 steps that would be, and that's totally fair. And that's how a company should start. An MVP, it's a real thing, right? An MVP is, I have a vision. My MVP looks nothing like my product in 3 years, but I need to start somewhere. And it's this first function that helps people. And maybe that first function for you guys is that it's some unique content or some unique speakers that come there, and okay, that's the aha moment of, this is great. And, just because it's so unique, people start following you. Then you develop the MVP forward. So you develop the concept more. You maybe bring people that are, have that followership or more unique in their spaces. Then you build the more business tools, and the podcast continues to grow.
So like technology, it has this ability to completely turn industries like upside down. So even in the media space, for example, TV, radio, they were huge. Like, especially, I'm 42. So I grew up, when everybody would sit in front of the TV or listen to the radio, but now that's all but disappeared. Now it's all about streaming and, even listening to podcasts. So like what do you see as, like, is podcast something that's viable for the long term, or do you kind of see that as, okay, this probably has a shelf life before we move on to this other format of consuming media? Like, do you see any potential threats to how media is consumed, specifically like podcasting?
Yeah. So I think podcasts are here to stay. I do think that the biggest threat there, I've already seen a podcast that is, and even like a vlog that is totally done by AI, right? So, assuming, for example, you had the content for this conversation where I would type that and send it to you, and you can create an avatar that speaks on my behalf. And actually, you don't even show up to the podcast. You have avatars for the hosts. So, and then there's just that can sort of replace you. And then the other problem is, again, proliferation of content. And I'm saying this particularly because of our capacity for attention as humans. If we were machines, more information is better, right? We can maybe put weight to different things. Maybe we say something is low credibility, so we don't listen to it that much. As humans, though, we have that capacity of, there's only so much attention and so many things that I can absorb on a daily basis. And this is where one of the major challenges that I'm facing now, and I think AI is close to solve that as well. Look at the amount of channels that we're communicating. I'm sure that you're on WhatsApp. I'm sure that you're on Slack. You may be on Discord, and you may be on other platforms as well, Instagram, Facebook, others. I cannot have enough attention to very quality groups that I'm part of. Some of them are unique, closed groups with a lot of value that is flowing through the channels. I just don't have enough time to read through it. So we need our agents to really look at a volume of communication, saying, look, here's your daily prioritization of things that went through this communication. And these are the 5 things you really have to address.
So like to really compact, to really summarize all of this stuff.
Correct. But a much smarter summary than not just like summarizing, like, Google has a summarized mail of all the mails that you got today. But a much better approach is saying, look, based on your goals, Ohad, you are a venture capitalist. You're trying to find X founders. You're trying to raise money. You're trying to do all these things. I went through all the channels. I recommend that you respond to Rob and also to Jennifer, who's asking this, and like really points you out to where you have to put your attention. It's attention optimization. That's what it is.
So like as a venture capitalist, obviously you want to make money. That's one of the core principles of that. But on the other hand, just as us being humans, we should have a responsibility to not only make money, but in a way that I guess is socially responsible. So like, have you ever had to avoid businesses because while it might be profitable, it's something that you don't particularly want to invest in because of its effect on people? Let's just say, for example, like cigarettes or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the concepts is really investing in things that would be good for the greater good, or something that has impact on society in one way or another. Now, again, I wouldn't say that our investments are, cause-based. It is organizations that may add some value to businesses in different sectors. We wouldn't invest in anything that has the potential to kind of be borderline, or have some sort of very negative impact on whether that's the environment or society or children or others. And so, yeah, I don't think any of our businesses were ever close to there. It's just not, we don't believe those businesses would be successful because of that backlash as well. Aside to the negative impact, they won't get the attention of consumers. We don't believe that they would get enough attention for anyone who wants to partake in engaging with these businesses.
That makes a lot of sense.
Brian, did you have any closing questions?
Closing questions. I guess only thing I would want to ask for, especially for our listeners, is that for someone who they have a business idea, they're not quite sure where to get the funding, they don't really know, what angle, what street to go down. What would you tell that, that very entry level green person that, they have a great idea, but they just don't know how to fund it? What would what's your number one advice for that person?
I'll give you a few, but I'll happen to have here a great book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. This is by Bill Ollett. He was one of my professors at MIT. It is a must read for entrepreneurs because it almost gives you the framework of, let me kind of tell you how to structure your thoughts. As you're saying, when entrepreneurs, and the question that you asked, are very confused. What do I do? Do I raise money? Do I go to clients? Do I build something? What do I, that kind of gives you, wait, what type of business are you? What do you think your next steps should be? And doing it in a very disciplined and systematic way. Like, what questions do you want to ask? Another great book to read is what's called Lean Startup. And I'll explain sort of the concept here. Some people, they're so excited about their business that they have in mind that they go a few steps ahead without that validation. Sometimes that few steps is investing. Like, first thing to do, I'm going to go to my father-in-law and ask him for $100,000. I'll take that money, I'll hire an engineer, I'll build the product. Well, you just spent $100,000 from your father-in-law on something that had no validation. But if you had that methodology and you knew that you have to start with this go, no go approach with, understanding if there's interest in this, you may have, saved yourself this much time, much money that was spent. So that's Lean Startup as well. Finding a mentor. This is an easy one. Not everything is on your shoulders. There's people who've been there.
Yeah.
I'm part of a platform called Hubble, by the way. Hubble is a platform like Intro that has experts that would sort of give their time. And the money that you pay for their 30 minutes or an hour is probably less than what you spend on the bar in an evening. So they're there to sort of give back and have your sort of commitment with that as well. So if not, I'm sure that everyone can find through their networks who are some people that can advise me, maybe starting with giving some advice and potentially becoming a formal advisor for you. I think those are some things to do. There's a lot of content out there. And honestly, today, this is not a recommendation that I would do 3 or 4 years ago, but sit with AI, have a conversation with one of the models there. They would help you with that framework as well of what can I do in order to have an idea. This is what I want to do. What do you suggest that I do? What do you know about the industry? Even market research has become much, much more easier from when you had to go to the library and look for information about specific industries, which is probably not even relevant because it was not updated. Today, you get almost real-time information. So there's so much information ready for you out there and people that are willing to help. Sometimes it's just reaching out and say, hey, I would love to kind of grab your time for some advice from my business.
Awesome. Definitely an amazing conversation. We're at the top of the hour, so we got to get out of here, but we definitely appreciate you. But before we do leave, did you want to leave our audience with any closing thoughts, and where's the best place for them to find out and reach out to you at?
Yeah, so best is to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I live in the digital world in some capacity at least. And just as final closing comments, we're going through a transformational time with AI. I'm very excited about this, but I also know that there's a lot of noise out there, right? Think about your career in a long-term aspect of what are the assets that you, as a listener, what are you developing? What skills can you build in order to be very, very strong 5 years, 10 years down the road? Don't just think about the next shiny thing and can I sort of build a business and sell it in 2 years. Really think about the long-term journey of what you're trying to do.
like a bit more like Henry Ford and his Model T? Is that kind of what you're getting at? More
Yeah, I think
long term?
it's more about the what skills and what experiences do you want to gain. I'll actually tie it back to my story of when that person asked me, do you want to build a company right now? And I said, absolutely no. And it took me another 10 years to gain the experience I needed to build then a successful company. Right. So that approach of like, what do you really need to build it? I know that we're all impatient, and that's great because that's maybe part of our drive. Like, I want it to be happening yesterday. Great. But what are you really sort of building with your career and your journey to be more successful 10 years down the road?
Awesome. But no, it's an absolute pleasure having you on. We have to bring you back sometime.
Thank you. Would love to be back.